Let's talk Tulpamancy and Vocality. By vocality, I'm talking about the verbal communication between a Tulpa and the Tulpamancer. So this is going to touch on the metaphysical side and the psychological side of things. So for a lot of psychological Tulpamancers, one of the main things that happens in between them and their Tulpa is the communication back and forth within the mind and even on occasion outside of the mind per se. So, given the idea that a tulpa is a mental construct that exists within the mind, within but separate from it, attached to and connected with the mind of the tulpamancer, a lot of the communication happens within here. And there's a lot of different ways to build that communication. I mean, for starters, when you're beginning to develop the idea of a tulpa, you are narrating a lot of the experiences that you're having around you with the intention that you are talking to someone and that they are listening. There is the idea of parroting, where you can kind of structure or script the responses that you would get back when you would talk to your tulpa, and then your tulpa would answer, and you could script those responses, and it's kind of a way of teaching them how you want them to respond and teaching them how you want to talk. Like I've said in some of my other videos on this subject, that parroting is kind of a it's like training wheels ish, and a lot of tulpamancers actually they shy away from parroting because it is a consciously dependent thing, because you are both doing the talk and the responses, so you don't want to rely on that too much, because otherwise you're not giving the tulpa the opportunity to become independent enough to respond on their own. So while I was thinking about the ideas of what to talk about in this video, I kind of thought of, what kinds of things could I relate tulpamancy to? And so I thought about different movies and such. So if you've ever seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, where he begins to communicate with and establishes a relationship with a sentient computer program that's voiced by Scarlett Johansson, the idea of where the communication is primarily verbal, and there's talk and response, talk and response, talk and response, and he's talking to a non-physical entity through all of his devices and stuff, like the Bluetooth thing on his that's connected to his phone and the computer and stuff. That should kind of give you an idea. Other examples of it are between Tony Stark and Jarvis, or after Jarvis becomes Vision, Tony Stark and Friday, where there's talk and response. And then also in Spider-Man Homecoming and Karen. It's actually really interesting, and it's a cool idea in terms of understanding the initial stages of vocality and whatnot. If you look at Spider-Man Homecoming, because once his friend undoes the training wheels protocol, the first time that he puts the suit on, boom, he starts hearing a voice and stuff, and it's very foreign to him, and he doesn't exactly know how to communicate with it and such. And he decides to give, he's trying to think of what name to give the suit lady, quote unquote suit lady. And first he says Liz, then bad idea, then it says Karen, and she's like, I like Karen. I mean, in terms of developing the vocality back and forth with tulpamancy and stuff, that kind of thing can happen. In my personal case, I got the vocality first, and then my watcher slash tulpa picked their own name, what they would like to be called, from a book that I was reading at the time. Kind of like, oh, I like that name, that kind of stuff, and that can kind of happen. Once again, you can identify them and pick them and give them their name, or they can kind of pick it. You can identify or give them their personality, certain personality traits, or they can just develop them over time. There's a lot of guides and stuff for this. If you check the Tulpa Reddit, the tulpa.info, and other resources like that. There's no one way to go about tulpamancy, but there are some sort of little guides of, this is how this is how you start, this is a road you can take, and this is a road you can take. So in terms of the way that the vocality um, sounds is, you have a thought and your tulpa responds. One of the difficulties that I had initially, and I think others have, is differentiating, is that my thought or is that their thought? You know, and I like to think that over time you can kind of get an idea of, those more spontaneous thoughts that are responses to those first initial thoughts. Those can come from your tulpa if you are working at building such a thing. And the learning curve for this is different for everybody. Some people get it easily. Some people it might take a long time, maybe a couple weeks, a couple of months. Um, I don't think that there's a correlation between the amount of time spent forcing, which is, um, actively directing your attention and thoughts and stuff and conversation to your tulpa, and when vocality happens. I think for me personally, it kind of happened before I even recognized it happened. Then I was like, wait a minute, this is going on. Sweet, I did it. It worked, right? And I'm getting annoying whatnots on my phone. Sorry, guys. But so, like I said, it's different for everybody. In terms of differentiating voice, between your own voice and the tulpa's voice, I'd like to also say that sometimes it's different. Like, take a second, be quiet, and think. Just think a thought, like a rhyme or a phrase that you use a lot, and just think it in your head. Try to identify, repeat it several times. Try to identify what the tone of that voice is in your head. Is it the same as the voice that you hear when you talk out loud? Is it different? For me, it was really difficult to understand and try to get a hold on what does my mind voice, the voice in here, what does that sound like? Because I'm not listening to it with my regular ears, right? And as I started to build the communication through the Tulpamancy methods and stuff, um, I was like, okay, how do I differentiate voice? Well, I'm a troll on YouTube. I like to listen to a lot of horror stories. From like Let's Read, Your Maker, Hell Freezer, um, Corpse Husband, Mortis Media. There's tons of them, and I was like, maybe I could use one of their voices for the Tulpa's voice. So what I did was I listened to a lot by a specific narrator. And then, as it was almost like imprinting kind of stuff. Like if you spend a lot of time living down south, you might pick up that accent, that kind of thing. Um, so my Tulpa started to pick up the tonal quality of the horror narrator that I was listening to, a specific one, and it's kind of changed and ebbed over time, but it's kind of maintained that quality so that I can differentiate between my own inner mind voice and that of my tulpa slash watcher when they talk to me. And trying to think of anything else that I was going to discuss here. Like those are some tips with the vocality stuff. I guess some people actually will audibly hear their tulpa, and that can kind of classify as like an intentional hallucination. But we are kind of playing around with a very kind of out there, different way of thinking, almost an intentional DID scenario and situation. I don't mean to knock anybody with DID or anything. I'm not trying to start a flame war here or whatever. But let's remember that anything that improves functioning, that improves functioning on an everyday level is not considered to be a disorder. Anything that can improve your life is not considered to be a disorder. Although how weird it is or whatever, the lines are really kind of gray there. But the biggest understanding in the Tulpamancy community is that it's, if it doesn't harm you and it doesn't take away from everyday normal social interaction and doesn't hinder things and you don't rely on it too much for like your only social interaction and stuff, as long as it doesn't hinder healthy habits, then it is an okay thing. So back to the auditory intentional auditory hallucination stuff. So I guess that some Tulpamancers can actually audibly hear their Tulpa's voice as if it was a voice from somebody that's standing like right next to them. I have not been able to develop that. I don't know if I ever will, but I that's a way of playing with the mechanisms of the mind and kind of hijacking them to work in an intentional way that you want them to work. I'm not like I said, that doesn't work for me. I don't know if I'll ever develop that. In the event that I do, I will probably make a video on how I was able to do that, but I have no idea when or if or how that's ever going to show up or whatnot. But once again, that can happen. Like for a lot of us, it's just all going on here and whatnot, back and forth between two differentiated voices, two differentiated thought patterns and stuff, and it can, quote unquote, upgrade, I guess you can say, past that. It was really funny. I'm gonna try to think of how to tell this story, but I was in an argument with a family member, and it was really interesting because I could kind of hear my Tulpa in the background, um, kind of like tell me to calm down and stuff when stuff was getting heated. And I'm a very, very sarcastic person. I can say a lot of really blunt things and whatnot, just kind of to diffuse the tension. Um, it's a funny movie quote that popped in my head, but I can't remember what movie it's from, so I'm not going to make that reference, even though I just distracted here. But there's a moment in Spider-Man Homecoming when Karen is like, "Do you want me to activate instant kill?" And my Tulpa actually spoke that in Karen's voice at the time, and I all of my tension was just diffused just because of how blunt that was and how hysterical it was, and I'm just like, no, but I cracked up so much, and I couldn't even really show it because I was just trying to exit that situation or whatever, and not like family members know about that kind of thing, but so that's a little bit of a funny story. I mean, Tulpas don't just necessarily interact with you when your attention is 100% focused on them. The point is to make them independent and stuff. Because a lot of times I would have to communicate first or say something first and then get a response. And now it's just constant back and forth and whatnot. So that's a little bit on Tulpamancy and vocality, and also a little bit of anecdotes and stuff and how it's developed and how you can work with it. Let me know in the comments if you guys think I left anything out or if you have any other things to add. Once again, you can email me at priestofthenecro@gmail.com for any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, issues with general magic, how to work with the Necronomicon, Tulpamancy, and any of my other videos that you find. If you are interested in working with the Simon Necronomicon, I have my Necronomicon Studies playlist. I also have the Guide to the Spheres and Beyond, which is that book back there with the purple banner on the left. Next to it is my book Magical Mechanics, which is on how it's my take on how magic works within the confines of our universe. Then I have Magical Theater, which is about the psychology and energy of magic and how they interplay to create change both inward and outward and in your life in general. All of my books can be found on Amazon.com. Remember, you guys can always shoot me an email for anything that you might want to find out more about and or just questions and whatnot. And check out any of my other videos. Check out the little end banner thing for links to a couple of my playlists. You can check out my channel page for other playlists and stuff, and give me some video ideas and whatnot. So yeah, this was a much more energetic video than my last one because I'm not shooting it at like 5:30 in the morning. But let me know what you guys think, and good hunting.